Hello and welcome to this video on edema, or the term you may be more familiar with, swelling. Edema is part of your body's defense mechanism or the immune system. It is a way to increase blood flow into the site of injury and prevent pathogens or foreign material from spreading. This leads to an increase in fluid retention where edema occurs. Edema is not limited to your limbs or skin. It can occur in many organs, your lungs, heart, brain, and more. That is because it is a result of the way your arteries and capillaries work. This is one of the reasons you can observe it so much more easily in your limbs, but it's not so obvious in other parts of your body. While the process of edema is the same across all parts of your body, it is generally delineated by the location. This includes peripheral edema, which is largely in your legs and arms, cerebral edema in your brain, pulmonary edema in your lungs, lymphedema, which is in your lymphatic system or a result of it malfunctioning, and there are many more. While the mechanism of edema is the same, the effects are not. For example, pulmonary edema will affect your ability to breathe, but not necessarily affect your heart, while cerebral edema will affect your brain but not extremities. In short, edema takes 6 steps, with these being increased hydrostatic pressure, reduced colloidal or oncotic pressure, within blood vessels, but again primarily is within the capillaries, increased tissue colloidal or oncotic pressure, increased blood vessel wall permeability, obstruction of fluid clearance, and changes in the water retaining properties of the tissues themselves. As we've described these, the steps might seem too esoteric, so we'll explain them both in greater detail and with simpler language. Increased hydrostatic pressure is just a fancy way of saying that you have increased blood pressure in your capillaries. That is, the blood within the capillaries pushing outwards and into the surrounding tissue with greater force. The increased blood pressure helps to force the blood plasma out of the capillary, and this goes into the extracellular matrix in the area around the capillary. As your body normally has a rough balance between the pressure of capillary blood going out and the pressure of capillary blood that comes back in, this is not the case when you have edema. That means more of the plasma goes out of the capillary than comes back into it. That leads to a greater fluid volume staying outside of the capillary. The rough balance under normal circumstances does leave a fractional amount of fluid in the tissue that does not return to the capillary. Under normal circumstances, this excess fluid is carried away by the lymphatic system, making up for that small difference between the two. The amount of fluid coming back into your capillary is largely facilitated through what is called colloidal or oncotic pressure. This is normally a sort of seesaw situation. The inward pressure is countered by the outward pressure to reach a rough equilibrium, although you do occasionally see swings between one or the other that eventually level out. This pressure is a result of the proteins that are in your capillary and the blood within. This generates a force that causes fluid to move back into the capillary. This is what draws fluid that leaves. You can see the basic numbers for that here. As this pressure is lowered in the capillary, that force which draws fluid back in is less effective. That means more fluid remains outside of the capillary. You can see how the pressure is too low on the exit side of the capillary here. That's normally where fluid would come back in, but you're not getting it coming back in because it's not enough. The opposite problem occurs outside of the capillary, that is in the extracellular matrix, which is generally protein rich. That high protein content compared to the inside of the capillary creates a force that draws the fluid out of the capillary. This is further evidence of how it is a disruption to the net movement of fluid. Another change that occurs that is particularly important is the inflammation process itself. Normally you have relatively small perforations in the capillary wall. These are kind of like holes in a colander. They allow water to flow through, but only a very small water at any one time and at any one perforation. This is great for being able to move water away in a controlled manner. During inflammation, this process is completely ignored and the holes are made much larger and a much larger volume of blood is sent to the site of inflammation. This is supposed to deliver things like nutrition and oxygen to allow cells to replace whatever's been damaged, that has initiated the inflammatory process. However, in the case of edema, there may not be any damage that can be fixed per se, and as a result, you simply get excess fluid being allowed to escape out of the capillary. This would all be fine if there wasn't the last change within the capillary, or more accurately, vascular related, and that is, the lymphatic vessels are not working correctly. These are the final mechanism in the body, and they are there to draw away excess fluid that builds up outside the capillary and in the local tissue. These are what makes up that last little bit that isn't taken back into the capillary bed, and it's a reasonably effective system, but it's not foolproof as is shown by swelling. Lymphedema, or the general underlying cause of lymphatic vessel problems, is the buildup of lymph cells in tissue. This will block the flow of fluid in the lymph vessel, creating a sort of backup. Same way if, say, plumbing within your house was backed up, you would very quickly see water coming out of places it should be flowing away from. In this case, the water simply doesn't flow away, and as a result, you are unable to carry water away from tissues that it should be taken away from. The last mechanism overall that contributes to edema is part of it, but also not related to the vascular system, nor the blood in any direct way. Rather, it is the blood and water volume in your body. That is how, in a manner of speaking, how much blood you have as water volume directly contributes to blood volume. The amount of water volume in your body is generally a result of how much sodium or salt that you have in your body, and that is because water will always follow sodium. If you have lots of sodium, you will have lots of water. Normally, your body deals with this by removing sodium through your kidneys. The result of removing sodium via the renal system is that you also remove water. This is a large part of what urine is, along with waste metabolites, like urea. When your body cannot remove this sodium, it causes your body to hold on to excess water. This will increase your blood pressure. That blood pressure increases the amount of plasma that gets pushed out of the capillary, contributing to those hydrostatic forces or hydrostatic pressure within the capillary. As fluid builds up outside the capillary, it causes the tissue to increase in size. This is why you see swelling in your extremities. It is very much the same way as if you were to blow up a balloon. You would see it begin to increase in size. The addition of fluid without a way to escape means that you must somehow be able to stretch to accommodate it. The fluid is only able to do this because it's able to be pushed out of the capillary but not drawn back in. It is a one-way check valve, and that one-way check valve is only possible because something has gone wrong with a number of different other parts of your body that all contribute to the control of blood volume or the movement of extracellular fluid and plasma. By itself, edema is not a complex system when we look at the basic process. That is, you have net movement of water outside of the capillary into local tissue, but not enough net movement of water back in. It is the exact numbers of the changes in pressure and the number of interrelated systems that can make it complicated, but it becomes a little bit easier once you start recognizing what some of the key words are and what some of the key systems involved in ensuring that this either does or does not happen. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please place any comments, questions, or suggestions you have below.